Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Point and Click. And as always, I am Adam Razak.
And I am Jordan C. Johnson.
And today we're going to be talking about Batman, the Telltale series, Season 1, Episode 2, Children of Arkham.
Yes. So this is it's the second episode we've done in real time as it's being released, so it's not saying much. But I think this is the first great episode we've covered as it's been released.
I initially thought that when I first went through it. And I had a wonderful experience my first go through. I was so happy with how this episode turned out, and it eased a lot of my concerns about the series when I played the first episode. It pleased me as a Telltale fan, pleased me as a Batman fan, and just I greatly enjoyed it. And it's like the last episode we covered, which was the Walking Dead episode 3, we talked a lot about how the pacing and structure of that episode was way out of whack and very problematic. But I feel like this episode is a real testament to how far Telltale has come. It's like black and white, very, very big, stark contrast between the two in terms of storytelling.
Yeah, one thing I appreciated about this episode was the brevity, which is, I feel like maybe is a weird thing to compliment Telltale Episode 4 for being short, but I kind of appreciated how tight it was. I mean, especially after playing Episode 3 of Walking Dead, I mean, that episode just dragged, and this was like really to the point. They didn't waste any time. Every scene felt like it had purpose and some urgency to it. And it all just kind of it moved really quickly. It's like it's like an hour and a half, something like that.
Yeah. It felt like like you said, every scene had a purpose. It only maybe one, and even calling it a puzzle is a bit of a stretch. That whole thing with the drones, which went by in the beat of a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And every scene felt to the point, concise, and really drove the episode forward. No downtime, and whenever there was a moment for talking or some kind of long character conversation, it had real weight to it. It was very well written, and I think it added a lot both to this original story that they're trying to create. Like, what I really appreciate about this Batman series is that if you were to take away the Batman skin, I think you would still have a very interesting, well-written story about people. Like, if you were to take away all the names and everything, this would still be a really fascinating story.
Well, I mean, I can attest to that because, as established in the previous Batman episode, I do not know really anything about Batman beyond the movies.
Mm-hmm.
I don't follow it at all, and I don't care. So most of these characters, I don't know who they are. I don't know who they're going to be, and it's not important because it's involving as a piece of fiction.
It agreed, very strongly agreed on that. It's just so good, especially coming after The Walking Dead episode 3. It's just, man, this is probably my favorite Telltale episode. When I first played through it, this was my favorite Telltale episode in, how long has it been?
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen an episode really leave an impact on me the way this episode did.
Probably for me, since Tales from the Borderlands Part 1, I would think this is probably my favorite.
I'd say since the finale of that this is probably my favorite one initially, though.
Yeah, let's start with some of the negative on this.
Yeah.
Which for me, the negatives happens at the beginning of the episode. So I don't know how much we'll agree on this, but right away from the beginning, I was a little nervous. You start with that sort of kind of annoying puzzle section in the alley, which tried my patience a little bit. But the bigger problem for me, and this is something that I think Telltale has run into a couple times, where they're dealing with a narrative and characters who have a history and who have, a past, and there's a challenge there when you're playing a character and you're kind of shaping the emotional landscape of that character, and you're making the decisions as that character. But if you don't entirely know that history, or you haven't been given like a proper, I guess,
Introduction.
yeah, I don't know about introduction, but more just they haven't really allowed you to get acclimated to like the emotion and the ideology of that character you're playing.
Okay.
So when I'm playing as Bruce Wayne, and you hear everybody's talking about your parents, and everybody's talking about the murder and all these figures and people and how you feel about your family and everything, that really just kind of went over my head because we never see that. You're never allowed to experience that. They're just telling you that. They're telling you that your parents were a big deal in your life. They're telling you that when they died, it was devastating. They're telling you that you believe your parents were not corrupt. And then other people are telling you your parents were corrupt. But for me, when I'm playing this game, my only introduction to this is these people seem pretty bad. Like, it seems pretty clear pretty quickly that they're corrupt, and I don't have any experience with them in this game. I was never given a glimpse of that childhood and was allowed to develop any kind of bond with them or Alfred. So my immediate reactions at the beginning of this episode were just, I don't care about these people. They seem like shitty people, and I'm not concerned about it. Like, I felt no emotion. Like, the problem is they're playing that whole sequence as if it's complex, and as if it's difficult, and as if it's a really complicated situation, and your father was a complicated man, and you are supposed to have all these conflicting feelings, but I don't really feel those. I can see that the character supposedly is feeling them, and I'm supposed to feel them, but because I've never had that history, I never experienced that myself, I don't feel that. All I feel is these people were corrupt, and I have no problem saying it, and why can't I just say it? You know what I mean?
It does assume a lot.
Yeah.
Like See, I didn't have that problem just from a personal standpoint, where I'm very, very familiar with the world, the characters, how these people feel, what they've been through. So it didn't really bother me personally, but I can see that as a problem for someone who is not familiar with Batman world, even like.
Well, familiar with like the property or not, I mean, this is still its own interpretation that's different from other interpretations.
Oh, hell yeah!
So that's what I mean. It's like I don't like, for me, it's like that doesn't even matter, because as a standalone work of art, this should establish the emotions it needs to pull you into that world. And I get that, there's probably a give and take there, because you have to think, well, how much time do we want to spend on this, and how important is this? Because it seems like ultimately, we'll see. I don't know how important that parental thing is ultimately going to be to the narrative and how we're supposed to feel about it. But yeah, so I get that there are probably decisions at play there. But yeah, it was a rough start for me. And I think starting points are something Telltale does struggle with, which we'll talk about in the beginning of Walking Dead Season 2. But like, for me, that episode is insanely frustrating, and it just feels like they realize they need to get to a certain place to start this, and they just kind of push you into it, and because of that section can get rough for me.
Well, I'll reserve my comments on Walking Dead Season 1 for now, but I must say, the beginning of the Batman Children of Arkham, I was shocked. Like, I was actually very surprised that Telltale is going to go in the direction that I hoped that they would, because I've seen a lot of Batman games where, and not only just games, but movies, lots of recent Batman media, that instead of having the balls to create their own iconic moments or create their own stamp on the lore, they want to fall back on like playing it safe, like
Sure.
making cute little homages to stuff that has happened. I think that's a problem that's plagued like Dark Knight Rises. I think it's plagued the recent Batman games. It's a problem that I have. It's a problem I have with a lot of properties in general, especially properties that are decades old.
And comic book properties specifically.
Yeah. But I said in the last episode that I hoped that they would not brush aside that the idea that Bruce's parents might be corrupt. And to my delight, they did not. In fact, they give hard evidence that Bruce's father, who for decades has been the big focal point for why, like a huge inspiration on Bruce as to how he behaves as Batman, what drives him morally, philosophically, psychologically. The death of his parents, specifically his father, is what has driven him. And now to see Batman's the root of Batman's ideology flipped on its head and put under this really large microscope is fascinating to me. And I'm very happy that they're actually going to, hopefully, I another fear I have is I hope this isn't just some, like one of the things that drove me insane about Batman Arkham Knight is that any kind of shocking, new, risky thing they could have done was easily just kind of waved away by, it's a hallucination. That didn't really happen. Mm-hmm. Or it all works out in the end. It's okay. But no, here I'm hoping that they don't do that. I want them to go all the way with Bruce's parents being corrupt, particularly the scene where it's shown video evidence of the father putting the Penguin's mom in Arkham and injecting her with drugs just so he could take her land. I thought that was, and
there's no coming back. I mean,
no. Yeah. I'm hoping that's not. Another fear I have is that the leader of the the Children of Arkham, is going to be Scarecrow, and then he does the whole fear toxin thing again. And
that's who that was.
Well, I'm hoping that's not this game's version of the Scarecrow. I'm hoping it's not. I don't want the mask to be taken off and it's I'm Scarecrow. That would be very disappointing for me. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that does not happen.
Yeah, I think that is the whole like putting a stamp on the lore thing. That is something that I really noticed. And again, this is even as somebody who's not terribly familiar with this stuff. This feels different than any other Batman I've seen. Like, even just visually, like the look of the Penguin is so. I mean, I've never seen the Penguin look like that in anything. I mean, I'm used to Danny DeVito and shit. You know what I mean? This is just a pretty normal looking guy who happens to wear this really pronounced gas mask essentially, and it has like this different look and feel, and the character feels new and unexpected. I didn't know that he was going to be the Penguin until it happened. So it feels like it's taking liberties and doing its own thing. Another thing, I mean, as far as Bruce Wayne's parents being basically shitbags from the looks of things, that's a pretty huge departure from any other Batman material I've seen before, at least on film.
Yeah, I loved that. I was, and it's so interesting happy they're gonna take it. Yes, it's so good. Even like you said, even like different. I mentioned also last time of how surprised I was with how violent it was. Very casually, a lot people are just shot to death on screen in like really bloody graphic detail. Particularly Bruce Wayne's parents were usually when it's portrayed their murder, it's usually just like one shot and they'll fall to the ground. You'll see maybe a little bit of blood form under them. No, in this series he gets shot not once, eye. Not twice, shot through the eye. I don't know what it is about Telltale and damage to the eye, but it's oh my goodness. It was just, I was like, wow, they're really taking it to that extreme, and I couldn't be happier about that.
Yep. Yeah, they're really allowed to take liberties with the tone and the violence that you can't do in movies and TV.
Yeah, it's what this episode is, what from a storytelling perspective, when it was first announced that Telltale was going to do their own version of a Batman story, this is what I was hoping it would be,
Yeah.
because they aren't playing it safe, at least not yet. I don't want to go full out praise until I see how it ends after 3 more episodes.
Sure. Which seems crazy. I mean, they're setting it up for such like an epic story and arc.
Yeah.
That we'll see how they do it in 3 episodes. I mean, I would be thrilled if they really take this revolution idea like to the fullest extent and make it like an all-out war in Gotham.
Well, there's the image that gives me some hope. When you look at episode 5, it's a still of Batman, and the whole city is on fire. So I'm hoping that's what it turns into, where it's just all out chaos. Where they've hinted before that, like in other movies and TV shows and comic books, where it's like hinted at that Gotham's gonna go all out, and sometimes it does happen. I think one of the more recent examples is like, I guess, The Dark Knight Rises, where Bane takes over, but even then, it's very problematic the way that's portrayed. But it's a lot of telling and not showing.
Sure.
But here, I'm hoping that we really get to see this like Gotham descend into chaos with the Penguin and whoever the leader of the children of the Arkham is, and possibly Two-Face and whoever. That would be great. I would love to see that.
Yeah, and I mean, again, if I have to have a criticism here, I think the only like one thing that could make the Penguin stuff even more interesting is if you had a little more experience with that childhood relationship he and Bruce had, which I know there's supposed to be a history there, but you don't really feel that when you're playing it. It just he just sort of feels like a villain, and you just sort of feel like Batman. And I know that's not the case with them as characters, but they don't really allow you to explore that.
There's really no conflict with Bruce Wayne when he meets, even in the first episode when he's talking to Penguin. It feels that confrontation feels very muted. It doesn't have the personal history behind it, or the pain of confronting a former friend who's now going to become an enemy. It just kind of falls a little bit flat. I mean, it's still a good exchange, but I think it could have been done better in both episodes.
Yeah. So let's talk some choices. Who did you go as to visit the mayor?
I went as Bruce Wayne.
Interesting. So I went as Batman. So how does it play out for you?
Bruce Wayne, it's basically the same, except you don't find out. As Batman, you find out that Thomas Wayne stole the land from the Cobblepots by drugging the mom. He explicitly tells you, which I think is better if you find out through the video. That to me made it more shocking.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't think I got that much out of him as Batman, but I feel like it's probably more fun to play it that way.
Yeah, it definitely is.
I'm surprised he told you anything. Part of the reason I didn't go as Bruce is because I couldn't imagine why he would want to tell Bruce anything.
Yeah. Well, he said, he brags like, oh, I'll get away with this, but the only information he exclusively says to Batman is just about Thomas Wayne locking Cobblepot's mom up in the asylum. That's the only thing that's different between the two.
Let's see. What about Catwoman or Harvey?
Harvey. That was a decision that my favorite Telltale decisions are the ones where I have to pause the game and just walk away and think about it. Well, I always tend to do that with some of the I think the one I remember the most is Game of Thrones. There's a choice in the Game of Thrones finale where I literally had to pause the game and take my dog for a walk to think about it. And it I think the writing in that is just it goes to show Telltale is just
Yeah, see, that's interesting because I would never do that in Telltale. Because for me, like as I mentioned before, one of my favorite things about the way they set up these decisions is how you have to sort of do it in the moment and live with your decision. So I can't imagine like just sitting with it like that. But for me, it was easy. I didn't even think about it, and I just saved Selena instead.
Oh, so you got the new origin of Two-Face.
Yeah. Well, what happens in yours?
If you save Harvey, Selena gets shot in the shoulder and she kind of just fucks off. But Harvey has like a little tiny bit of a scar on his face, and that's really just about it. So I'm hoping another worry I have with that explicit decision is that I'm hoping Harvey doesn't become a villain in both choices. Like I want to feel like my action has made an impact on the Batman lore.
I will be surprised and impressed if they don't let him become a villain in your version. I don't expect that to happen. I feel like he's just going to turn into Two-Face somehow, but we'll see.
I feel like it'd be a giant cop out if they just if they course corrected it where he'd become Two-Face rather than somebody who would fight by your side in the potential chaos-filled finale.
It could be interesting that I could see them potentially doing. Again, I don't know if they will. I don't really expect them to do this, but it would be kind of interesting if they basically had Selena and Harvey change sides depending on that decision. Where,
that would be great.
Like in your version, you kind of might wind up fighting against Selena, where I'm probably going to wind up fighting against Harvey. That I could see them doing because I know like Mass Effect has done similar things. You know, I'm sure it's very difficult to program completely different narratives, but maybe not so much putting different characters essentially filling the same role.
And that kind of leads into what's bothered me about this episode.
Okay. Well, we should say, just in case anybody listening has only done your decision.
Okay.
If you choose to save Selena, I mean, what's his name? Penguin drops like a hot stage light on his head and burns off half of his face, and that's where you're left.
That's a really good new. Just as a fan of the comics, that's a really cool new origin story for Two-Face. Like the psychological scarring, especially if you combine that with telling Harvey that you're not going to fund him anymore, and basically kind of like breaking
Did you do
off
that
that
too?
friendship. I didn't. I said I was going to keep funding him.
Yeah,
but I love that, especially if they were to make that if they were to expand that spider's web of decisions where it would combine both you dumping him, not funding him anymore, and then he becomes Two-Face with the hideous scarring. Like, it just drives him even crazier than what it normally would if he were to become Two-Face, but you still want to be his friend. Like, it could be this even more, like, tragic element to it. It's just, the possibilities are endless for what they could do. But
let's hope they do it.
My gut is telling me that they're not going to.
Yeah.
Which is, again, that's not a guarantee. I'm not going to criticize them for something that hasn't happened yet, but I'm still excited to see what happens next, but I'm going to be cautiously optimistic about how they're going to expand the choices in this series, because we've got 3 episodes left and there's a lot that could happen where things could change. So keeping my fingers crossed that they actually really just take the ball and run with it.
And you know, again, I feel like there's a little bit of the same criticism at play where that relationship with Harvey would be more interesting if I felt some of that personal friendship and connection they supposedly have that I don't really feel like plays out all that much through the 2 episodes. I mean, he to me just kind of seems like, okay, he's a politician and I'm funding him. We're clearly friendly, but I don't have a history there. I don't know if I should really trust this guy. He just seems like a politician to me. So they'll tell me things about how he's trustworthy and Gotham needs him, but I don't feel like there are many illustrations of that, especially with him inviting Falcone and everything in the first episode. So I mean, I'm just kind of going by, again, it's telling and not showing. I'm not really feeling it. So I feel like it's another relationship that is robbed of some depth and complexity because we're not really allowed to live it.
I think I think with the relationship between Harvey and this version of it, the vibe I'm kind of getting is that even though, like, they have lunch, they talk like they're friends, it seems like it's just a mostly business relationship. Because it feels very distant between the two. It's kind of like that friend that you're obligated to have, and like you're getting something out of it. Like I've always felt like that, even from the first episode with this version of Harvey Dent, where it's a lot more kind of just like you're like step way back, and you're at a distance between you and Harvey, but it's just it's a mostly business relationship.
Yeah. And again, like, sort of feeding back into the whole thing with your parents being corrupt, I just kind of feel a little limited as to, like, why can't I just give a statement to the press and say, they're fucking corrupt, and I'm not ashamed of it. It's not my fault.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not my parents. You know what I mean? Like, why does it keep holding you in this box of trying to defend them and not believing? It's like, why do I not believe? If you want me to understand this character and why he's not saying anything about this, you need to do some more work to give me time with that relationship. Because without that, I'm just like, no, these people are horrible, and I'm ready to say it. So why can't I?
I didn't like the exchange between him and Vicky Vale. I think that's one of the things that bothered me the most from a writing perspective, is that all the choices that you're given are not things that I would say. I wanted to say something much more detailed to her regarding what had happened, but the game gives you no options to do so.
And that actually I did not want to do, but I still did not like really the options that were there. There were a lot of times in this episode, which almost never happens, where I chose the silence option because I just didn't want to do anything that they were saying because they were too based in emotions I didn't agree with about protecting people or being defensive or whatever. I just didn't feel like that made any sense for what I know in the narrative. So that's what I mean. Like, they're banking as we've talked about, this happens a lot with Telltale, but they're banking on you feeling a certain way. And they're expecting you to feel a certain way because they think this is how it's going to make you feel. But they underestimate their own writing and don't realize that this could make people feel a lot of different things. So they don't really plan for it or allow for those feelings to develop. They just kind of pigeonhole you into feeling this certain way, which is their single biggest limitation at this point.
I mean, we've gone on this before, but it's I think, like I said, with the technology that they're working with, they are limited by what they can do. I think for the most part they've done a damn good job with the limitations that they have, but I think it's time for them to just like really move on past a lot of the old hang-ups that they have. I've noticed stuff that they do in this episode that bothered me back in The Walking Dead, where it's like these limited dialogue conversations, like the story will just course correct itself. And we talked a lot about this on a previous episode, but it's like, I don't know, maybe going through this 3 times, which maybe that's my fault, but it's like, I kind of, like, on like my second or third time through this, I kind of felt like this odd burnout from this very standard Telltale formula. And I don't feel like they are, like, I feel like it could be improved still a lot more. And it's frustrating still at this point, after 4 years, it's been 4 years since the first Walking Dead, that they still are in this like old rut of course correction and very black and white situations sometimes, and it's frustrating to me.
As I've said before, their strength is their own biggest enemy. Yeah. Because they're so good, you want them to be better.
And I really felt it with this one, going back and playing through it second and third time, which I'm glad I did, because I for this podcast I don't want to go on my first impressions. I want to like really dig deep into what
you're crazy, like, dude.
I mean I've it made me doing this podcast made me realize that, especially with The Walking Dead, because I used to like really love The Walking Dead season 1, but going through it again with because of the podcast, it's made me more conscious of the big problems within Telltale's structure, and it's like and I'm seeing it now again with Batman, and it's just I feel like just throughout these years I've given them a lot of slack, and I'm kind of like at this point where I'm like I want something more. Like I'm fine with what they give, and I'm very happy with what they give, but I feel like they can do more, and I feel like they're limiting themselves with not only like the graphics engine that they use, which I'll get to later, but also with how they write their stories. This whole like I feel like instead of a spider's web, like some of the best choice driven stuff I've ever played, like Mass Effect or The Witcher 3, like I get this mind blowing sense of this like enormous like spider's web of choices and consequences that happen. But with Telltale, I always feel like it's split between just two. Like I always can see and the only time I feel like I can always see the paths that they go on and the course correction. Yeah. But like by the end, really the only time I've ever seen them really go out and do like multiple different stuff is Walking Dead season 2 and Game of Thrones. Like those are really the only two times I've ever seen them create this very large spider's web of different outcomes. And I think those are great. And I wish they would do more of that in like the earlier episodes and without any of the course correcting. Like at this point I want something different. And I'm kind of like I still love you, Telltale, but I need more from you at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think this episode for the most part is relatively less affected by that kind of problem. Mm-hmm. It's more just for me the limitations in terms of the relationships and the way you're written into certain things. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, it's hard to tell at this point like how big of an issue that may be as it goes. Mm-hmm. I don't know. My judging historically by Telltale, I'm afraid of where it could go. Yeah. I don't know. Like the more I think about Telltale, there's so much I love about them, but I'm not sure I've ever played a Telltale season where I felt like by the end it was completely satisfying in where it went. I think the closest is probably Walking Dead season 1, which I think has a pretty good ending, and to a little bit of a lesser extent probably Walking Dead season 2, but a lot of them for me, the way they wind up turning out is just sort of like they just kind of land with a thud instead of really making an impression and doing something interesting. The worst of it for me is Wolf Among Us, where I feel like it ends with this weird setup for a second season, which felt really inappropriate to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, they're so good, yet they're so frustratingly not as good as they could be.
No, I understand what you're saying completely. It's just, I don't know. It's just this, it's this weird, like light bulb that went off in my head when I was playing through this. That I'm just like, now that I'm older and I'm a lot more familiar with the whole Telltale thing, and I've played other games where I feel like they do this better. I want Telltale to adapt to more stuff like what BioWare does with Mass Effect. It's like that. Yeah. That would be great.
I think one of their best strengths, despite how we're talking about them having certain formulas they follow and everything, one of their biggest strengths for me is their willingness to take risks with stories and properties and characters for things that really genuinely are unexpected happen in most of their games. Like Falcone just being gunned down in the middle of that conversation, which was a big surprise for me, or them just going full on with, the Waynes being corrupt or whatever. I mean, these are not things I would expect to see in risks I wouldn't expect to see taken with other creators.
I love all that stuff, and I'm very happy that they're going to take it to that very risky, dangerous area. And I'm already seeing like a lot of people like when I initially read the reviews, like it seemed like most people were pretty lukewarm to this episode, which surprised me. And I
Really?
think, yeah, a
See,
lot of
I haven't read anything about it. I did not know
so a
that.
lot of people, I think the majority of the complaints were the technical issues. But I think a lot of people were also really like they were kind of taken back by how dark and different it was, and I expected that
Well,
to
that's
be,
dumb.
I expected that to be a big praise for them, but it's like I know like quite a few people that are like detailed reviews that I've read that's like I just feel alienated by this property now, and I don't like the way they're doing that, which I think is
Ugh.
I think it's silly.
Well,
I
I
think
mean,
it's just silly.
that's fucking like comic book fanboys again, though. It's the same shit they
Yeah.
pull when a movie does anything different or deviates in any way from their fucking beloved source material. Where it's just like, Jesus Christ! I mean, we can't judge this stuff like this. It really has nothing to do with it. I mean, a piece of fiction and art should set its own goals. I mean, you shouldn't be going into this loaded with all of your, Batman expectations. I mean, it's not there to fulfill expectations based on other interpretations of the material.
Yeah, a lot of how I feel about this series is also a lot of how I feel about like Batman's portrayal in something like Batman versus Superman, where it got a lot of shit for Batman being very brutal, a lot of like hands-on, like
Right.
actual blood from the combat of Batman, like him. He does kill people. He does.
Yeah.
But I don't.
And he should.
Yeah, I don't mind them taking that approach if it ties into the thematic material somehow, which it does. It absolutely does, showing this more violent version of more violent version of Batman in Batman vs Superman. It ties into what that movie is about and going through like what Bruce Wayne and what Superman and what all these other characters go through. It's frustrating to see, and I never thought I'd say this about Zack Snyder film, but it makes me frustrated that people are complaining about it, and yet I'm perfectly fine with what they do in it. In fact, I love it. I want more.
It's ridiculous. I mean, the problem with that kind of complaint is not only is how Batman is portrayed in not only a different interpretation or in a different work of art, but in a completely different medium. Not only is it just that is not relevant to how he's portrayed in a standalone movie, but it's also not relevant because nobody even has the same interpretation of that character. Like there have been so many different incarnations of Batman and throughout decades of comic books and everything that, I mean, all kinds of different things have happened. Nobody agrees on what the rules are anymore. Everybody has their own fucking idea. Batman is this amorphous pop culture figure at this point. And to like hold him to some phantom set of standards and rules because that's what you think the character should be is fucking absurd. It's like it's at this point there's so many different realizations and interpretations and ideas about him that it's like if you took a group of like Lutherans and Catholics and Muslims and whatever, and put them in front of a movie about Jesus, and they all like complained because he's not the character they would think that he is. But every denomination is going to have their own opinion about that stuff. You know what I mean? It's insane. You can't just judge it based on this, like, set your own individual set of criteria, because at that point, if you're doing that, you're not paying attention to the work of art at hand, and you're not judging it based on its own merits. You're injecting all of this other preconceived bullshit that is just irrelevant.
And it's also like I'm tired of people like when like new visions of previous properties come out. I'm tired of them playing to old standards. Like I want something different. Like why bother giving me a new vision of something if you're just going to remake? Like I think one of the more frustrating examples for me is how they treated Wrath of Khan in Star Trek Into Darkness, where like it was just such a fucking shameless ripoff of Wrath of Khan that I feel like just sitting J.J. Abrams down and being like, dude, are you not interested in creating your own iconic moments? Are you just
Of course he's not.
Are you just so content with living in the past regarding, like, they even go so far in that fucking movie to do the Khan scream, which is just, I'm like, I'm done. Like when they did that in the movie, I was just like, I just threw up my hands. I'm like, I cannot do this anymore, and it's just
Well, I mean,
I don't like
that's
it.
all Abrams has done is live in the past his whole career. I mean, he's ripped off Spielberg, he's ripped off Star Wars, he's ripped off Star Wars again. Like it's all he does. Like he's not interested in making his own thing. His own thing is the past.
And I like J.J. Abrams for the most part. It's just
Yeah.
that whole thing with Into Darkness and elements of Star Wars. It's like, all right, dude. I'm kind of tired of this shit. I want something
Yeah.
else, please.
Yeah. Well, did we cover everything? Did we miss anything?
I just want to quickly. I'll quickly go into the techno stuff, which is part of my problem with this episode as a whole. It went apeshit on me in terms of glitches and audio bugs. And
Okay. Well,
I was so pissed off during my second playthrough of this.
you mentioned that there was that update. Did that update fix them?
No, that's why I played it.
Because this, I
today,
gotta say,
and I was
this
like,
was one of the smoothest Telltale episodes I've ever played. I had no issues at all.
I'm very jealous because I mean on my first playthrough, even then it would like stutter a lot, and then the second playthrough it would do the stuttering, it would do the bad lip syncing, it would cut to like when there's the scene where you're exiting Mayor Hill's office, it would cut to this gray blob, and it was just really awkward. It does that damn audio cutout glitch again during the bar fights, and you have to start all over again. And it cuts out the noise feedback when you're doing the drone puzzle. It was like Telltale just gave me this really lovely dinner and then just poured salt all over it. And I was just like I mean I love everything that I love mostly everything that it's trying to do, but it's just as an interactive experience, like just as an audio visual presentation, I feel like this is among the worst I have ever played from Telltale, and it dampened a lot of my initial enthusiasm for the episode.
Well, I can tell you when it runs smoothly, it's very good.
Oh, I bet. That's why from now on I'm definitely picking all these up on PC. I'm done with them on the PS4.
See, mine's on the PS4. It was no issues at all.
I don't know. Maybe this is it's probably just a crapshoot, but it's an unfortunate. It's just an unfortunate crapshoot. And what makes me even more irritated is that every time a new series comes out, they always say, "Oh well, we're upgrading our engine. We're gonna make it better," and then it comes out and it has the exact same stuttering and glitches, and I'm like,
I don't
guys,
know, man. I like for me, almost every series has been better than the last. The buggiest for me though was Game of Thrones, but I don't know if that has something to do with me playing it on PS3 still.
Probably.
So I'm very curious to see how that plays out on PS4. But I have been noticing improvements.
And I think that again that ties back into what we talked about. I think last time with them. Maybe not last time. One of the other past episodes with them supporting so many different platforms that, like, they're limiting themselves. Like at this point, I'm kind of like, okay, guys, you need to shit or get off the pot. Like you need to drop all this other crap. Focus, like keep your focus on like maybe 3 platforms at the most, and get as much power as you can possibly can out of them. I think it just
I'm sure they'll do that once the mobile ones stop making so much money. But
Yeah.
I don't see that being anything happen. I don't see that happening anytime soon.
And that's unfortunate because I want them to break free of their technical restrictions, but I this is one of the ones where I just noticed it the most, and I'm just like, "Ay, all right." Yeah, so that was a disappointing, that was a very disappointing change of opinion for me, because I think I texted you, I was like, I think I have a new number 1 for this podcast, and then I played it again, and I was like, well, I can't in good conscience say this is my number 1 just because of the problems I'm having with it, just technical wise, I can't. I'm tired, like I said, I'm tired of giving them slack. I want them to just break away from all this other crap and just really, really hone in on what's best for them. But like you said, all the other platforms make so much money that they're just going to see that and just not They're not going to
Which
bother.
which is totally understandable.
Sure, but I get it from both sides. I get it. I completely understand it from a financial and business standpoint, but it's frustrating from a creative standpoint for me.
Sure. So with that said, that's a good segue into what are your top 5 at this point. Well, I mean they're all top 5 because we've only done 5.
Yeah,
but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Why don't you go first? Because let me
Okay.
think about this for just a little longer.
So for me, it's starting with number 5, Walking Dead episode 3. Then number 4 is Batman episode 1. Then Walking Dead episode 1, Walking Dead episode 2, and my number 1 is now Batman episode 2.
Wow, even more than Walking Dead season 2. I mean,
Yep.
episodes. Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
But I think I think it's. It could maybe be argued that Walking Dead episode 2 has the higher highs still. I'm not. I don't know if I would say that, but I could see debating that.
I think the pacing is better in the Batman episode, though.
Yes, the pacing is better, and I think the problems are less glaring for me in the Batman episode. Again, any technical things people may experience aside, like my complaints about the second Walking Dead episode artistically are, I think, more egregious than my complaints about this Batman episode.
Sure, that's completely understandable. All right, so my number 5 still is going to be Walking Dead episode 1. Then number 4 is episode 3 of The Walking Dead. Number 3 is Batman episode 1. And yeah, fuck it. Batman episode 2 is my number 2. And then Walking Dead season 1 episode 2 is still my number 1.
All right. Well, I think that about covers it for this episode.
Yeah. I'm really liking these 45-minute time
Yeah,
frames for them.
I think that's probably the best goal.
Yeah. Little bite-sized Telltale Kit Kats for you guys. All right, so Jordan, where can people find you?
Oh shit. I'm around Twitter at @5th_opinion. That's good enough.
Down the street.
Yeah.
In your own backyard. And you can find me at Razorblade Mango. Just do videos and stuff. We have a Twitter now, so I'll put that on there. Need to start updating that shit. Now I finally have the audio from my old computer for the past episodes, so I will be looking into putting these on iTunes finally.
Nice.
And I will need.
What's the Twitter handle? I don't even remember. Didn't we changed it, didn't we?
We did. Let me log into that, which I should have
We
done.
don't even know our own Twitter handle.
No. Because by default I have it on my personal one.
It's
Okay.
I don't know.
So it's going to be at Telltale Pod, and it's going to be point and click.
All right.
And yeah, I'm not looking forward to talking about Minecraft. I'm really not.
Minecraft started really well, and then
Yeah.
it kind of goes downhill.
I just was reminded of that now because Telltale tweeted something about someone said episode 8 is fantastic and satisfying, and I'm just like, ugh.
We'll see. I like Minecraft a lot as an idea.
Yeah.
And the way it starts, but it has problems and it becomes less interesting as it goes.
I mean, say what you will about it, it is probably the riskiest project they have ever done, and I greatly appreciate them taking that risk, but yeah, I'm glad it's done. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. If you like what you see, subscribe. Let us know what you think about this episode, and yeah, we'll see you guys with Walking Dead episode 4 next time.
Yes,
most
yes.
likely.
I can't imagine why not.
Unless they release a new series between now and then, which I'd be very happy if they did that. Can you imagine if they pulled like what a lot of music recording artists are doing now, just surprise albums, like the surprise new series right now on PlayStation?
Surprise! Telltale Mass Effect.
Oh well, actually no. I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, you better be.
God, okay, fine. Telltale Thomas the Tank Engine.
Oh shit. Well, hey man, I'm down. Whatever they want to do.
I'd be happy. All right.
Anyway,
See you guys later.